We're wrapping up our panel discussions in celebration of our founder, Walter P. Lomax Jr., MD, with a special WURD Hosts Roundtable on the role of Black press in perilous times. Brought to you by Brown ShopRite Family Partnership with Dietz & Watson Artisan Meats and Cheeses and Hers Snack Foods. Moderated by Evening WURDs host, Nick Taliaferro.
Before you, ladies and gentlemen, is a battery of the finest radio voices to be found anywhere in this nation.
Come on now.
Yeah. And a little applause would make that seem like you actually believe it. I'm going to start from your left and my right, and I'll introduce them all, and then we'll get right into the questions. Oh, incidentally, I'm Nick Taliaferro, and I get a chance to moderate this. It's sort of like trying to herd cats, almost like trying to crawl through hell wearing gasoline underwear to get all of these voices to work in concert. But watch and see the magic that happens. All the way on the far end, ladies and gentlemen, the host of Groundings, Brother Shomari. Next to him, the man who gets it started for us in the morning, irrepressible and trenchant in his penetrating dialogue, Mr. Solomon Jones. Next to that gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, is a young woman who has now earned the moniker as the princess of gospel music and the host of CrossWURDz, Miss Kayla J West. And now coming to you, ladies and gentlemen, with an intractable ability to hold a guest's feet to the fire with just a little hint of the Caribbean crosswinds and ginger. Please give it up for Andrea Lawful Sanders of The Source. And now, with a taste of the ethereal and the spiritual mixed in with enough intellect to ground it all, please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome from the Envy McKee Show, Miss Envy McKee. And now a voice that is, it is drenched and wrapped in experience, wisdom, and sagacity. She knows where the bones are buried in the city of Philadelphia. Please, ladies and gentlemen, also of The Source, Miss Joann Bell. Last but not least, the scintillating brilliance and the penetrating analysis of the true reporter. Please make welcome, if you be so kind, the gentleman who helms our midday program, and that is the reality check, Mr. Charles Ellison. This is it. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. No, this is it. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any better than this. Trust me, it doesn't. We're talking about the role of black media and the communications that come through our black media outlets. This question goes to everybody, and we're going to start it from Charles and work our way down. And I would ask that each of you would give like a 90-second answer to this one, and that is from your perspective. And Charles, as a veteran journalist, it's good to start with you. What is the role of black media in contrast to, perhaps, the general media? We'll start with Charles Ellison.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it, Nick, and good to see everyone here this afternoon. The role of black media compared to other media, right? And I feel like black media is mainstream media because it's representing us and it's representing so much of us. Mm-hmm. I always joke that I'm not really I don't have a journalism background.
You don't?
I have a public affairs and a political background, right? And I just kind of happened into journalism. But that gives me a very unique perspective. I'm able to look at how the media world operates and the journalism world operates a lot differently, especially because I've been in those trenches and those front lines of policymakers and decision makers. And to me, black media, black press in a moment, especially like this, is King's fierce urgency of now, right? It's Douglas's North Star to offer us that guidance. It has to be always at all times on a mission. And that's what's so different and so unique about it from regular or mainstream media. We have obligations. We have very unique, very serious obligations and missions to complete that, frankly, corporate media, mainstream media, as they call it, do not have. They don't have those same obligations, okay. And we have to operate with that same kind of mentality or mindset.
Thank you, sir.
At all times.
Thank you very much. Well stated. Ms. Joann Bell, you've been both behind the microphone and in front of it as they ask you hard questions. What is the role of black media?
Well, I'll start with it. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. I would start with saying that no one can tell our stories the way we can tell our stories, and they can't do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. We've lost a lot of black media across this country in ownership, TV, radio, and so there are a few left doing this job, and that means that there's a greater responsibility to do it. And finally, I'll add, we got to do it truthfully.
Yeah.
We've got to call balls and strikes as we see them. And so when we talk on Wednesdays with Black Women's Leadership, we spare no one.
That is true. That is true. All right, Ms. Envy McKee, the role of black media.
For me, and it's particularly from the realm of spiritual literacy, it's about being able to articulate the consciousness of the world we want to live in, right? Because we talked about it on the I wasn't on it, but I was in my head. I was on that panel that just left. You know what I'm talking about? Oh my God! And that Black women as tech, being able to articulate those ideas in a way that is not in the consciousness that we're already in. We know what the problems are. We know what, we can talk about those, but can we articulate the vision for where we actually want to live, for the kind of society we actually want to live in? And that's part of this work. It's to be able to see beyond where we are and to speak truth to power to what, in the now to the future.
I'm capturing from your comments the prophetic role of black media.
Oh, absolutely.
To speak what is not as though it were, to lead us forward in that. Ladies, get it out there. After the holy dance, we will take it off.
I'm just saying, but is that not what we learn in church? Is that not whatever mosque, whatever our spiritual ideas are, or ideations, part of that is teaching us how to do that in our lives.
I tell you, if you keep going like that, I'll take an offering. I'm a minister, Andrea Lawful Sanders, the role of black media, if you would.
So good afternoon to all of you. I have not been shy in having this conversation. There's no such thing as black media. There are black people in media.
Come on.
And our lived experiences is what creates the necessity for the spaces that we're in right now. So often when, quote unquote, mainstream media comes into our communities, they do the surface stuff about our stories, about our lives. We live the experiences. We understand the nuances around our lived experiences. And so we're able to articulate and speak to the subject matters that would often be ignored. Thank God for for Dr. Lomax Jr. MD, because without him, we would have still been suffering. We still have mainstream media in this Philadelphia area right now that isn't addressing our needs. And every time we open our mouths and ask about it, we're kind of shuffled off to the side, right? So this Founders Day is particularly important to all of us. And when we say support us, we just mean that. $80 a year is nothing to hold on to. Listen, I'm going all the way in. You got it. It's necessary.
We're going to ask the panel to treat their words like they're tied. Just give us 10%.
Listen, no, because we don't get the funding that other people get.
That is
so
true.
So it is important for us to have that conversation.
Just as soon as the rest of our commentators get in there, go ahead, Andrea. Kayla J, as the youngest member of this panel, what is the role of... That's right, she's not the youngest member, I am. But Kayla... What is the role of black, especially from the generation that you're a part of?
So black media is so important because without it, how will the truth be told? How will we know our history? How will we know where we come from? And because like Andrea said and like Ms. Joann said, this is our space. We are the black and people of color in these particular spaces, and it is our duty and our responsibility to tell the truth. Because my generation, we're looking up. Other cultures, they share their stories, they share their heritage, and sometimes we're super quiet about ours. So black media is really important for my generation because we look to the media to tell us the truth. We look to the media to tell us the stories.
We look to tell the story, tell the truth. Raise fist right there for Sister Kayla J. Solomon, you live by the word through your books, through your writing, through your speaking. The purpose of the media that you are so much a part of.
For lack of knowledge, my people perish.
Oh, yes.
Right, and so our job as media is to tell our stories and to inform our people. somebody's going to tell your story. It might as well be you, right? And so we have people who come into our communities, and I think Andrea put it perfectly. They tell what's on the surface, but beyond that, they tell what's on the surface for them, right? They tell what's on the surface from their perspective. And you know, as somebody who's trained as a journalist, my degree is in journalism. I've written for every major publication in this city, appeared on national media outlets numerous times, and done radio here in Philadelphia. And I love what I do at WURD. But I've seen it from the inside. And you have people who know nothing about our community, not necessarily trying to tell our stories, but trying to tell their stories about us. You understand what I'm saying? And so we have to understand that our responsibility goes beyond just telling the story. Our responsibility goes to the street. I done been in the street putting my body on the line for our people. That's what we have to do. It has to go beyond what the numbers say. It has to go beyond what the statistics say. It has to be about what we hear, what we see from street level, and informing our people so that we can not only survive, but thrive. Like, we are the voice of our people, and there's nothing more sacred than that. And that's what black media is about.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. So there's a level of authenticity that has to be reflected in what we do. Last but not least on this one, with a drum beat that incessantly reminds us of the ancestry. Brother Shomari, the source of black media.
I'm an ideological son of Del Jones. So for me, number one, our responsibility is to stand in the eye of the storm without fear. Number two, media for us must be and has historically been connected to our social movements, our movements for justice. You know, our media has never stood separate from, you know, the final call is connected to the Nation of Islam. You know, the NAACP has its outlet. So we have to tell the stories, we have to paint the pictures, and lastly, we have to craft the future. We have to use our words and our platform to create a vision that our people want to aspire to, not just telling what is, but also crafting what can and should be. Those are my three responsibilities. Ladies
and gentlemen, those are great comments from all. Let's give them a warm round of applause. And now we'll really start getting into the gumbo of this conversation. Really great reflection here. I heard speaking truth to power, telling the future, laying it out there. Solomon spoke about being authentic. Truth, Kayla was talking about. We said all of those things, and obviously we all agree that they are true. Is it possible to do all of those things from the perspective of a media outlet that is not owned by black people? I mean, there are people who would say, well, you can do all of that and work for action. I see Solomon grabbing the microphone there.
Yeah, because as I said, I've written for every major media outlet in Philadelphia, and I think it's possible. It depends on who the outlet is, and it depends on what their agenda is, and whether or not they will allow you to use your voice. You know, I've written for the Philadelphia Daily News and the Inquirer. Now I write for the Inquirer, and I'm grateful that I am allowed to use my voice. If you read my columns, you know why white folks send me hate mail, right? Because I can use my authentic voice. They asked me to do it. Solomon, we think you're smart enough and you're good enough and balanced enough. They didn't know I was going to write about liberal racism too, until I started doing it. But it really depends on that outlet where you are and whether or not they are comfortable enough to allow you to use your voice. There have been other places where I have not been able to do that. I wrote for Philadelphia Magazine. They edited my stuff down to nothing, you know. But it really, that's my answer. It depends on where you are and whether or not they are comfortable in allowing you to use your voice.
But I think just his saying the word allow, that for me that tells the whole of the story. Like any place that you work, the idea is that they want you to work there because you bring value to being there. So the fact that someone would need to allow you to be yourself, to be a place that they want you to work, that's the problem. And I think that speaks to why Black media is necessary, in the same way that Ebony and Essence and Jet was necessary, in the same way that Ebony, what was it, Fashion Fair, fashion show was necessary. All of those things came about because we were not allowed to be our authentic selves in what is considered mainstream. So we created our own. But I guess I don't know if this is the goal, because a lot of what we've been talking about today as Founders Day is ownership, Black ownership. But, you know, I think the goal should be wherever you go, you get to be yourself, period, end of story. And if you're not to be yourself, then you don't be there.
But you make mention of that the idea that at times you feel that there's a need to ask permission in certain settings.
Yeah, but why?
Okay, Charles?
Yeah, just to add to that real quick, the two big themes that are coming out of this Founders Day are agency and ownership. That's right. And we live in a very remarkable period in human civilization where we can just create our own. We have the technology now to create our own vehicles, our own platforms. I mean, that's what Founders Day is all about, what Dr. Lomax did. In terms of he found those resources, he leveraged those resources, right, to create this platform. And we've been able to grow this platform through the genius of the minds assembled here today, the support of everyone in this room, and also leveraging a lot of the innovation that's out there and having the technology. You know, a lot of times we don't need to ask for permission anymore. We've got social media vehicles, we've got blogs, we've got, I've taken it upon myself to just go ahead and create a couple of media vehicles or platforms of my own. And a lot of people, that's what a lot of young people are doing now. No one has to ask permission to be their authentic selves. That's the remarkable kind of human moment that we're all living in right now.
When we have
and we should take when we can take advantage of it, and that's a very powerful thing.
Shomari has something. Then Joann, I have another question for you. And you can answer both of them. But let's get to Shomari, and then I have a question that I'm aiming directly at.
I just think it's an area of significant struggle that we can't take for granted. That the independence and independent is something that has to be fought for. I mean, as much as one whose voice gets constrained often on many issues.
Oh yes.
I
tried it 10 years ago.
I'm not going to stand here and act like we get to say and do what we want to. I know that that's not true, even in independent spaces. Mm-hmm. So for us to act like there are things you can't say on the internet. As one who was censored, for my views on a lot of things, I'm not going to act like this fight for independence is won. We still have to fight that because there are views of independent, powerful Blackness, and those views get censored if they're not within the realm of what people consider legitimate. We still have to fight that fight.
After this question to Joann, I have one for Andrea that talks about the multiplicity of Black voices and whether or not we have to figure out if one is more authentic than the other. But I'm coming back to Joann, and I know you have something to add to that question, but I wanted to ask you, now that we talked about the importance of agency and ownership and being able to do things without having to ask permission, then what's the impediment? I mean, we've got a Black, independently owned station, but yet there are individuals who act as though it's a luxury as to whether they wish to avail themselves of it. What's the impediment of getting the message and the truths and the authentic narratives out through Black radio? What's stopping the Black community from rallying around it and saying, yes, more of this?
I don't know. I don't quite know the answer to this, but I'm going to round it off. We have to have political will first. And some of us don't exercise it. And because you can't have agency unless you use it for your political will in order to create something. This station doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has to have advertisement. And when you look to that, we don't support it in the ways that we should, mm-hmm. But also we don't have the ability to support it in some ways because we don't own anything. You gotta own something. You got to build something to support something. John Johnson, who you referenced, who built Ebony Magazine, Jet, when he first started out, he created other companies to be the vehicle in order to bring those magazines to you. He created Fashion Fair. He created lines of business in order to do that so that he could get that magazine on the stands. We have to decide that we will work for others up to a certain point, and then we will build our own. That we go in it not to rise up and think that we're going to be leading these companies, but to learn enough about how it works to go out to do it yourself.
Well, that addresses the impediment. I mean, the fact that we don't have that mindset. That's one part of the impediment. Did anybody else want to give a go at that one? And then I wanted to ask Andrea a question.
I think another impediment is that there's one thing to have a black perspective on what is and what reality is. It's another thing to craft your own narrative, your own vision, your own purpose. And I think that we have to have the courage to do that, because that's what sparks and ignites people. That's what sparks and ignites young people. And so if we're just parroting a black perspective on what we're told to talk about, because that's already on the media, and so we're just putting a black carbon copy or perspective on the talking points that are already out in the universe, what are we offering?
Come on. Did y'all watch Self-Made? The Madam C.J. Walker story? I thought that it was so brilliantly done, but one of the key things that I took from the experience, her husband, the C.J. Walker, represented the establishment. And he wanted for her to just slap a light-skinned black face on her brand so that they could reach a broader audience. And she was like, nah. And that's why she was able to achieve the success. She put her face on it. A underrepresented face, a face that most people, for whatever reason, didn't deem beautiful because she was beautiful. So it's like, yes, exactly what you're saying. We have to be willing to be ourselves. And traditionally, being ourselves meant lynching. Traditionally, being ourselves meant, speaking out meant harm to our families. It meant we're going to have to, step into the fire, the storm, the whatever it is. But the reality is, if there is safety in numbers, there is safety in us deciding, well, regardless of our differences, we're all in this together. And I don't mean just black people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean all of us. We have to decide that we want a kind and just society that works for everyone.
Yeah, real quick. On impediment and kind of the challenges that we face. The other big thing that's happening right now in terms of trends, we live in this remarkable age where, there's all kinds of ways to disseminate and access information, but there are a lot of risks that come with it. And I think for us as a black community, we're faced with this challenge of trying to make the difference between, like, if we really want information or if we want infotainment. And that's a real big problem. So, you have a lot of black voices and a lot of black platforms and black media outlets now, but there's a lot of noise. And it's like sifting through the noise, particularly in an age of infodemic, of truth decay and disinformation. And so,
infodemic. Can you define infodemic?
Infodemic is like the pandemic, the spread of just untruths. Okay. And so, but there are platforms, media outlets that claim to represent us that are really not, because they're not spreading truth. And so, it's trying to distinguish between what's infotainment and if we want that, or it's like the Neely Fuller school of thought, right? Neely Fuller in his book talked about how, like, if we're in an elevator together, let's have a serious conversation. No jokes, no play. We're not going to talk about hanging out tonight. We're going to talk about, are we going to get about the business of really serving the community and actually completing this mission for our people?
Well, let me say something.
Let's get Kayla in there, and then Solomon. Then I got to get to Andrea at some point. But Kayla was waiting, and then Solomon will come right at you.
I just kind of want to.
I just moderated.
Yes, you did. Good job, Old Man River. But
she calls me that.
I want to just go back to what Charles was saying. You can't always have infotainment, but I think there's a time and place for that, even in black media. There, you can inform and do it in an entertaining way, and by entertaining, not meaning that it does not have to be solemn and humdrum when you present the news. You can definitely talk about what's happening in the Ukraine and happening in China and happening right in North Philly and South Philly, and still have just a little bit of joy. Because if we continue to be solemn and humdrum, then we will erase joy from our culture.
Is that essential for younger generations to have it that way?
It's essential for everybody.
I just asked a question.
Sorry, it's essential for everybody, and you know that is one thing why I love WURD, because yes, we inform you all, but we're human too. We like to entertain, we like to laugh, and you all like to be entertained and laugh as well. So I think, Charles, you're right, but I also think there's a time and a place for infotainment, and y'all can listen 7 to 9. We infotain.
Yeah. What I would say is this: that it doesn't matter how informative you are if people turn the dial because you're boring. Real rap. Like at some point, and you know, for me, I think that's the benefit of having been in multiple media environments. You know, major radio stations, newspapers, magazines, WURD. You know, you have to be able to hold the listener long enough to inform them. And the other thing is this: black people have been through hell in this country. There's a reason why we have the best comedians, right? Because laughter is the best medicine. And so when we are talking about things that are death and destruction and doom and gloom and all of the things that our people go through, 3 times as likely to be shot and killed by police, more likely to die from COVID, more likely to get monkeypox, more likely to suffer any kind of negative thing that is going on in this country, if we can't laugh, then we can't survive. Yeah. We need to be able to inform our people in a way that allows us to keep their ear long enough for them to leave feeling better about who they are. We have to be able to do that.
And so I'm going to put the period on that.
I was going to ask you a question.
Hold on. Let me put the period on that and say this.
Moderated, hold
on. We are not a monolith.
Yeah.
And we do not want anybody to tell us how we should think and feel.
That's right.
And so therefore, when people have opinions, we have to give them the space for those opinions and stop telling them that they're stupid and crazy and that they shouldn't believe anything. They should just follow what they hear. Black people have been following what they've been told for decades to our own detriment. And so we want to make sure that when people take the time to listen to us, that we take the time to hear them, even if we disagree, and that we disagree in a way that makes sure that they feel heard and not walking away limping with more trauma than what they've already been visited upon.
Can you stay right there for me, Andrea? Andrea, I want you to stay right there because you're right in the vein of what I wanted to ask you. And that is, when we talk about black, there was a time, you say we're not a monolith, there was a time when somebody said urban or something like that, they meant people who were descended from, right. But now black comes in a multiplicity of avenues and cultures. Multiplicity.
Yeah.
And so Andrea, as a person who comes to this microphone and these airwaves with an experience that's different from mine, how do we make sure that we are inclusive of other voices that are just as authentically black, but maybe not black the way I am?
Listen.
Wow. So those who listen to my show will tell you this. I listen to learn. There's so much I did not know about Philadelphia, about African Americans, the culture here. I literally said to the listening audience, teach me. Teach me what I need to know while I teach you what I know about my own culture. I can only speak to what I'm clear on. And then I invited people from the African diaspora, people from Ghana and Sierra Leone to speak about their own cultures. We wrapped it in food and thought. Education in Jamaica is vastly different from education here. Who the hell am I to judge and to tell people that they're not learning anything because X, Y, and Z? So it comes down to having an empathetic voice, an empathetic ear, right? And to really hear people instead of trying to just hear ourselves talk. It's important to me.
Shomari, you have a response to that or add to that?
I want to understand the dilemma. Black people have always been not monolithic.
Always.
We've always been a people of multiplicity. So I'm not clear on what the actual...
Where the question was generated from?
Yeah, help me.
I'll give you a good example. You'll hear people say sometimes, you know, we need black leaders, like when we had a black leader like Martin Luther King, because they figured he was the leader of all black people. So there's a perspective that says at one time that black people were like this. And even now, we will say that someone's not authentically black. Right. And so that's what I meant by, you know, you have people who are from Nigeria, people from the Caribbean.
We also say some people are too
people
black.
From the suburban. Huh?
Like I get told that I'm too black. So I'm saying, you know, it's just that's why we're all up here. I mean, we all are very different people up here.
While we're speaking about Shomari came to WURD literally almost exactly 10 years ago as a part of my program.
Yep.
Blame Nick. And I have not forgiven myself for that. but next week we're going to come on again and revisit the kind of dialogue we have, because Shomari is, you know, I'm black, but Shomari will go blickety, blickety, blickety black. And so there are differences there. I saw someone holding a microphone close.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's fascinating. And I think that, yeah, there's a richness, a tapestry, right? This very rich, infinite textile of views and perspectives and places, geography, like the diaspora is very rich with us, and we should celebrate that, and we should look at every aspect of that, explore it, examine it. I do find it fascinating the way we're defining information versus infotainment, as if information is just supposed to be something negative. No, information is just, we're exploring the truth, we're just accessing the truth, and actually we're finding solutions as we're doing that. So the want or the desire for information is about us always seeking, we are a very troubled, traumatized people, and we're always in search of a solution, of a fix. There are fixes, there are problems happening all over Philadelphia. I was just having this conversation earlier on with a few listeners here, and we were talking about how there are all these problems, there's endless problems in Philadelphia, and there's this sense, or there's this disposition that nothing can get fixed in Philadelphia. Yet, they have similar problems elsewhere in other places around the world. Philadelphia is one of the richest cities on the planet.
Come on.
There are all sorts of fixes and innovations and solutions. We're talking about like air conditionings in the classroom. And right now, white people are having a conversation in Philadelphia blaming the lack of ACs in the classroom on the increase in the homestead exemption. That conversation's happening now. Rather than saying, oh, hey, there happens to be about $1 billion worth of federal money lying around that's already circulated in Philadelphia and that's on the way. $250 million in ARPA funding in that city surplus. $735 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law. To be determined millions of dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act. Information is about finding a solution, a final fix to a lot of these problems that are plaguing us while we're standing around acting like we can't do anything about it. No, we can absolutely do something about it.
There's information, and then there's the way it's packaged. Okay, I get it. I get it.
There is.
And then after Envy's comments, I want to see if we can have some fun with each other a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That didn't come across right at all.
But there is a difference, and I'm not going to say there's a difference. When I was coming up at Hampton University, we learned that there are personalities and then there's journalism. And journalism is about, being unbiased. It's about presenting information in a way that is unbiased. And then throughout the age of the Fox News era, it became more about personality and angle and the shtick of it all. And everybody has been, I think, I'm not going to say everybody. A lot in the mainstream media, the global media stage has been more about capturing the audience's attention than about presenting pertinent information in an unbiased way. And so, just like everything else we innovate, it is our job as Black journalists and personalities to innovate the space where we are still presenting unbiased information and we are still allowed to be our authentic selves and personalities, and Yeah, and we are not being what Fox News has done, which turned information into the enemy, as Charles so astutely pointed out, where we're like alternative facts. Like, that's dumb. And the fact that we bought it, you know, hook, line, and sinker, that speaks to an opportunity for us to innovate in this space.
So I see you warming up, Solomon.
Are you going to moderate me? Okay, you're not. Okay, good. You know, again, I studied journalism at Temple University, so I got that same line from our professors. But the reality is that nobody is unbiased. That's the truth. Nobody is unbiased.
Yeah, Shomari just raised his hand and said he's biased.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah,
and so, no, but I mean, let me just finish my point. In terms of what we were taught that like the Walter Cronkites and the Harry Reasoners of the world were unbiased. They were reading news that was written by biased people. Right? And so we have to understand that objectivity is not necessarily the thing that they told us it is, that it is really trying to be fair in what we present to the people. It is trying to be informative in what we try to present to the people. And at the same time, I think it's trying to be empowering in what we present to the people. You know, what happened to me as a radio host was this. People started saying, all right, well, okay, you're telling me this problem. What are you going to do about it? Right? And that made me go to the street. You know, we protested. We held forums. When the city wasn't holding forums about safe injection sites, I was doing it. When they weren't addressing what was happening with the racism in the police department, I was doing it. You know, and I was doing it because our people called me to do it. So we have to become, I think, what our people need us to be in terms of informing them and then coming up with solutions, even if it means that we have to be the solution to the problem that we talk about.
But that's literally what I said, innovate the space.
Hold on just a second. Question to you, and that is, from what you just said, with the disparities that black people suffer and all that we go through, is it fair for black media to be biased? We talked about being unbiased.
Again, everybody's biased, and I'll give you an example.
Bias is linguistic convenience.
I'll give you an example. I have, you know, like I said, written for newspapers since 1993, right? Started with the Philadelphia Tribune. It's my belief that the most powerful person at a newspaper is the photo editor. Because you're going to see those pictures before you see the headline, before you read the story, before you do anything. Now, there was a story that I wrote. Got a photographer
in the amen corner for you there.
There was a story that I wrote for my column in the Enquirer about what was happening in Kensington, right? I don't know if y'all know what's happening in Kensington, but they down there, it is something like you've never seen before in terms of what's happening with the drugs in Kensington. People are literally on the corner while people waiting for the bus to go to work, shooting up right next to them. Right? Drug dealers, the police riding by, walking by, whatever, people shooting up by the dozens and back of daycare centers, like people defecating on the sidewalk in front of people's houses, like it is crazy in Kensington, right? And so I took a picture of the people who were shooting up drugs behind the daycare center in Kensington. All of them were white. My editor didn't want to run the picture. But they ran a picture for another story that I wrote about a fight in Disney World with black people down there fighting. So bias, what I'm saying is that bias doesn't have to be spoken, it doesn't have to be stated. You see it in the story and how the story is presented.
Tune in next week when we find out the mystery as to why they ran one and not the other. Envy, go ahead.
Bias is linguistic convenience.
And then we'll have some fun.
What I'm really actually trying to articulate is vantage point. Like each of us, there's not an experiment that could happen, even in the scientific method, that we don't bring our individuality into that experience. So I'm not naive enough to say that we'll all sit in front of our news cameras and we are unbiased in the traditional way that we understand it. But I also understand that if we're going to innovate something, if we're going to envision or vision a kind and just society that works for everyone, then we're going to have to begin to talk about things differently. We all have access to our complaints, but what has our complaints done for the world that we want to actually live in?
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So we're going to have to see beyond and begin to live in the now from that space of this is where I want to be. And so our vantage point is powerful in how we, communicate with our audiences. And each of our audiences are different. Yeah. Each of our audiences get something different from how we present the information that we have. And that's powerful and important. And that speaks to what we were talking about. We're not a monolith. And so you need all of these voices here in order to get the word out.
I consider it an absolute pleasure and privilege to work with this body of individuals. And I think I've interviewed or worked with everybody on this panel, with the possible exception of Andrea. And we're going to fix that real soon. And I want to ask you guys a question, just to have a little fun here. I think
you're scared of her.
I ain't scared. No, I'm from North Philly, man. I don't play, man. I flunk recess. All right. It comes down, there's a problem with the budget. We can't have our own shows anymore. We've got to team up and co-host with somebody else. Now, we all have our opinions one of another. If you're a talk show host, you're opinionated. Mm-hmm. Who would you like to co-host with that's a part of the battery of this panel?
Oh my God. Now, why would you do that?
You got Andrea?
I got Charles.
You got to talk in microphones, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody gets a chance.
I got Charles. I would like to see him in the woo-woo space.
You'll never find. Okay. Shamari?
He's turning red now.
You've already co-hosted with me,
right?
So it's hard to go beyond that.
Kayla J was my producer, so we already have our vibe flowing. Okay. I've worked in the outside world with Andrea, so I had enough of her.
Andrea? It was then that a fight broke out in the Free Library.
I wanted to have this head-to-head around the COVID thing. I was promised by our esteemed owner that Charles and I could do a head-to-head on the COVID thing, and it never happened. I'm outing the record right now. So
I said co-host, not head-to-head.
No, but no. For some reason, people have linked. For some reason, we're like a dialectical kind of thing, and I would like to see that happen on occasion.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Okay. Solomon, I heard you say Andrea before.
Yeah,
but
I'll take Andrea. I need people who are unapologetic, man. I love Andrea, and I love everybody on the panel. I love all of y'all, right? Even though sometimes we get on each other's nerves. I know I get on y'all nerves.
Like family.
I know I do. You ain't got to say it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that would be great if we could do a show together.
Okay. Kayla?
I already have a co-host. Her name is Danae Reed. But I've worked with everybody on this panel. So if I had to choose someone to co-host with, no offense to everybody on the panel, I love you all, I really do. I would have to go back to my original host. I would love to host with Shomari. We have a lot of budding views, but I think they make us both better.
Right. See my influence on her style? That's me right there. That's me right there.
All right. Andrea, who would you like to co-host with?
So Joann Bell and I have done this before to rave reviews.
Amber Alert?
Amber Alert. Oh.
Which one of you stole the child? Who?
I have worked with Charles before. I have worked with Kayla J. I've worked with you on the outside, and yes, we've worked each other's nerves because we're all about the Black Power. Solomon, have we ever worked together?
No.
Lord Jesus, I don't know. But we used to come in one behind the other first thing in the morning. So maybe with Solomon, I don't know. How about you? Have we worked together?
No. Okay.
It would be interesting.
Nothing should go
all right.
Because she's woo-woo. You're real woo-woo.
So you would say, who did you say, Shomari, or did you say Solomon?
So it's a cross between Solomon and Envy.
So you would work with Cindy. All right. Envy, who as a co-host?
Well, now that we've had all of this discussion around it, I don't know. I'm going to pass and come back to me.
Okay.
Think about it.
You said Charles.
I said Charles, but Charles got embarrassed. So
I like that. All right.
you do
Yeah,
the woo
thank you for that.
woo. You want to
Yeah.
do politics? The Star People political party.
Let's do it. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Miss Joann Bell.
So, I'm hard-nosed into the politics, and so I like people who can analyze, can get into it, because, I don't pretend to be anything other than a woman of a certain age that somebody gave a mic to on Wednesday afternoons. And I frankly don't care who I offend, because I know I can go home and live forever and not worry about a meal. And so I want to talk about the things I want to talk about. I operate with two strong women as co-hosts. Rita Hill and Paula Peoples, and Rita's here tonight, is here. But I also do something with Charles on his show every fourth Monday, and I love it because he challenges. I know Andrea from Inside Radio and Outside, and if I was going to get into a political fight, I'm coming to get her, so she's going to be my backup.
Okay.
And so I would, for those on the panel who want to talk straight about politics, I'll work with anybody.
Okay. Charles?
I've had the pleasure, the opportunity to talk with everyone. I think I've interviewed or I participated in everyone's show on some form or manner, and I feel the same way. I'm really, as everyone knows, I'm really serious about, I like to do serious public affairs, political issues. One day I would say, it'd be it'd be kind of a tie between, a hard-nosed political junkie like Joann. And I love when Joann now is coming on. But then I'm also I need to relax a little bit. I need to know what that feels like on air, so it's like envy, right? But then I love, but then I'm going to Andrea. I love that diaspora feel that she's bringing, that vibe that she's bringing. And then I love just also the seriousness and the commitment to community that, Solomon and Shomari are bringing to the table. It's a very hard pick, and then Kayla, I've had Kayla, her space, always, I have to admit, Kayla surprises me, particularly when we do like a State of the Union analysis at night, and she's gracious enough to offer her space to do. I always appreciate that, and then she brings it. She knows this is what's going on. So it's a really hard. I would have to say, on some level, I could see being in a space with everyone on this panel. Yeah.
There's one thing that all of them have in common. None of them want to co-host with me.
But let me tell you something.
The way you asked the question.
Let me tell you something. We did not realize that you were a part of the experience.
All right.
But you are.
You left yourself out of contention.
You weren't an option.
Oh, did he say that?
You said on the panel. You are not on the panel, sir.
Stop whining.
Thank you, Kayla.
You're welcome. I got you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the FCC is coming because somebody on the station said something that they shouldn't have said. Which host is most likely to be the person that the FCC is coming to get?
Shomari.
That didn't take long.
I don't know.
And you know what? I'm kind of insulted by that because if you know me on the street.
I know you on the street. It's you.
To do 10 years and never have a violation, though, when I curse like a sailor, and so I really work hard not to bring trouble to the station. So I'm a little offended that people would think that would be me.
We do think it would be.
Ooh. Now, to be talk show hosts, we have to have.
I forgot Michael.
Michael Cord. Yeah, Michael Cord. Yeah.
I forgot all about my.
Michael Cord has to stay because somebody got to get Shomari out of jail. So, you know, all of us are, you know, we bring our own level of gravitas to the microphone, but every once in a while somebody just cuts up. Who is the biggest cut up behind the microphone at WURD? Kayla? Andrea?
It's Kayla. No, it's Kayla.
Me? No, I mean, look, I am a very serious journalist.
Hey, Sarah, who's the biggest cut up?
Who's the biggest cut up at the station?
Oh!
The pain.
It's Nick.
You're fired. All right, take us ahead, ladies and gentlemen. We'll all go through this. 5 years down the road, there was a time when WURD was in trouble for simply being able to exist. Now we're seeing some changes 5 years down the road. And while we're doing this, you know, and
Is this a vision session? Are we doing woo-woo?
I don't know if we can say that in the library, but this isn't apple polishing, but I remember talk radio from back in the 90s, the struggle, and looking at the level of professionalism and the growth that we've seen. I have got to tip my hat to Sarah Lomax Reese for being tough, visionary, and persistent. She's not in the room right now, and I'm saying it because it needs to be said, because, you know, as a woman, when a woman is tough and persistent, they have different ways of talking about it. And we need to recognize the fact that she really has driven this station to a place where it's on a great platform now. But let's take it 5 years ahead. Each of us, and we'll start this time with Shomari. What do you see for Black talk media, particularly through the agency of WURD, when we look down the road 5 years?
I was listening to this podcast with Tavis Smiley, who just bought a talk radio station in LA. And he said there are only four Black-owned talk.
Well, I think his is the fourth.
Yeah, his is the fourth.
His is the fourth.
His made the fourth. And I was like, that's an unbelievable thing to even fathom, right? So 5 years from now, if we stand, hopefully that number is double digit.
Okay.
And hopefully the vibration of what we're talking about is more reflective of a people who engendered a movement towards actual independence and liberation, and that our platforms are talking about and ideating about, conceptualizing, debating, all of this fun stuff that you want to add to the mix about what that looks like.
At the risk of truncating our comments, I've just been told we have just a few moments left. So can you each take about 30 seconds to give us that 5-year vision? Solomon, if you would.
So 5 years from now, I see way beyond radio. I see us as a multimedia content producer with television, with cable, with online, with social media, and with young people really leading the way. That's what I see for us 5 years from now. I see us growing into a multimedia entity that goes way beyond just radio.
Okay. And incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, I am mistaken. We have another half hour. We have to take a break at the top of the hour. So, Solomon, if you wanted to add a little bit more to that.
Yeah, I think that we have to understand that media is changing, and that there are going to be some forms of media that aren't going to be around 5-10 years from now because their business model no longer works. And so for us, we have to understand that radio is just the beginning. It's a launching pad. There are so many places where media is being produced. We would be foolish to just limit our vision to radio. So I think we have to look at these other media, and we have to figure out how to produce content that is relevant for this other media. And again, young people are the ones who are consuming this media, making this media, and they have to lead the way.
Yes, we are, us young people. Kayla J?
So I agree with Solomon that I definitely see in 5 years we being multimedia content creators as well. But also in 5 years, I see us not no more being the best kept secret. I think when we just talk about black media, it's always kind of hushed. Only a certain niche of people know about it. But I'm expecting that in 5 years, because of social media, that black spaces, black talk spaces, and black-owned media will now be regular household names.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue with these responses on the other side of our break. But before we take the break, can you do me the favor of joining me in giving a warm round of applause for our panelists, the host of WURD Radio? We are right up against the top of the hour. We'll take a quick pause, and then we'll come back on the other side of the 4 o'clock hour to continue our conversation with our hosts. For those of you who are listening, we are emanating live from the Free Library of Philadelphia at 1901 Vine Street. And we are celebrating our founder, the life and the legacy of our own founder, Walter Pleasant Lomax Jr., MD. And we're doing so in fine fashion. We'll take this quick pause, come back and continue our conversation, getting our responses, and enjoying this great panel. Stay with us, folks. We're back right after this. And ladies and gentlemen, we are back with you live, and the only talk station that can say it in the city of Philadelphia, live and in color. WURD celebrating Founders Day here from the Free Library of the city of Philadelphia at 19th and Vine. We have with us a blue ribbon panel of talk show hosts from WURD Radio. I think that they are the finest talk show hosts to be found anywhere behind a microphone. Do you agree with me? If you do, Let's have a warm round of applause. When we took our break, we talked about a visioning statement or a visioning position statement on where talk radio, black media, might be in 5 years. We heard from Shomari, Solomon, and Kayla, and now it is time for us to hear from the redoubtable Miss Andrea Lawful Sanders.
You are hilarious. So listen, I'm fixing my face. You know, my face speaks loudly before I even open my mouth. But in 5 years, I would love for us to be the premier voices for black thought. In the
Did you say art?
Black thought.
Thought, okay.
In the multimedia space. Because like Solomon and Kayla have both said, one of the things that I am doing right now is that I have young producers that are under the age of 30. I'm inviting them into the spaces where we're having conversations that will speak to their voices, turning it into a podcast, right? So that's a part of the multimedia thing. So in 5 years, this radio station will not have to beg for money. There will be multiple ways for them, for the streams of income to come in. And so for those who love listening to radio, that voice will still be there. For the younger people who wants to hear the podcast, that will still be there. We need a whole piece just around politics. We need a whole segment just on politics alone, right? And what that means for us. And so I see that happening, but I see us in 5 years not asking for money. Money is just being sent to us so we can continue to do the work that we're doing and moving forward in a multimedia fashion. For those of you who have been listening to WURD for a long time, please understand we need to do this in order to survive. That it's not taking away from what you are listening to now, we're just adding to, right? So that this radio station, so this organization can thrive.
Okay. Envy McKee.
I'm contemplating that because I think it's powerful. Everything that we've already said I think is important. But I also feel like in order to truly leave a legacy, we have to be the blueprint. So I feel like in 5 years' time, I would like to see other media outlets that are black and brown owned doing whatever it is that we're doing. We're the blueprint of being able to have a media landscape in a kind and just society that works for everyone, where you can get voices however it is you need your voice gotten. You know what I mean? And I would like to see that expansion of the vision where it's not so white.
Okay.
You get what I mean?
Okay. All right. I see, it looks like Andrea just had an epiphany. Can you just give a short version of it so we can get to Joann?
Here's the part that frightens me. Every time we try to work within that structure, we lose our voices. We lose the qualitative pieces of what we've had to offer. Look at education in this country. We merged, we're no longer segregated, and yet what they've managed to do is continue to segregate us, and we're continuing to suffer so that other people can thrive. We've lost our black teachers. We've lost all the voices that we've had because we've been trying to work within the structure who does not want to work with us. If they want to come to the party, we'll say, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. Okay. But what I'm saying is if y'all want to come to the party, we'll allow you to come, but you don't get to take the seat at the table and take over everything else. We keep our premier thoughts and our premier voice.
Yeah, but I wasn't talking about integration.
Okay. Let's go. I want to get to Joann Bell. If we would ask the same question.
Wow. So I'm gonna take you back.
Put that mic up just a little bit further.
I'm gonna take you back.
Okay.
In 1994, I sat in a room in New York City at a conference with the Baby Bells. They were still in existence, with multiple platforms, and they were discussing putting satellites up that would allow us to have individual cell phones that would allow us and part of it said that we will be able to have watches that we talk through. I thought they were crazy. 3 years later, all of that came to fruition. You're asking us right now to determine where we'll be in 5 years. There's some smart kids sitting somewhere
that are already
in
doing
one of those universities that's going to invent something that we haven't thought about today and that we will want to be a part of. So I have no idea what that will be. The only thing that I think that we can have is the zest to be able to be a part of it and to move this particular body forward.
Okay. Charles?
So the 5-year business outlook for WURD, right? What I'm saying is happening in 3 parts. You know, we're strengthening like our local roots, but we're going global, and then we're becoming institutional. And so what I mean by that is that, you know, we still have Philadelphia as our home and our base, and we're strengthening those roots, and we've strengthened the community. The community's in a better place because of where we are now and where we get to 5 years from now. But WURD, I absolutely believe, and we already are getting there. We're starting to see the first signs of that. WURD will be much more global. So it's Philly, and then we got satellites in Kingston, Jamaica, or Accra, Ghana, or Nairobi, Kenya, or London, England.
Come on.
Right. You know, so going global, or Sao Paulo, Brazil, absolutely. Going global, having those satellites, because black people all worldwide throughout the diaspora, they want that. They have an appetite for the kind of information or the information curation that we do at WURD each and every day. And what I mean by institutional is we become the training ground.
Blueprint.
Like the training ground for black journalists, black media professionals, black communications strategists, having partnerships with historically black colleges and universities, training the next generation of communicators, the next generation of problem solvers. Because remember, so we're talking about 5 years from now, 2027, right? 2030, got some really climatic conditions we're about to deal with now as a result of climate crisis.
Okay.
And you know who's the decisive edge in solving that climate crisis problem? It's us, because we've always been on the front line of it. Whether we're in South Carolina or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or Africa or Europe or wherever, we've always been on the front line of that. People are going to be coming to us for the solution. So I absolutely see us going global and institutional 5 years from now.
You know, if Envy goes to church, she's got to get her own microphone to say, amen.
If I had my tambourine, it'd just be on and popping.
Let me ask you guys a question. This is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. We're in the world of being media, and we're not Democratic, and we certainly aren't Republican. But I got a call yesterday, and well, maybe we are. I don't know. Got a call. Republicans called. The divisions are so sharp nowadays that you almost have to be on one side or the other. But got a call from a Republican candidate whose name I shall not mention because Dr. Oz would not want me to mention his name. But got a call from his team, and they want to come on the station to talk. Because we want to share information with our people, do we allow certain voices to become a part of our, I see Solomon, you started off in the morning, Solomon, so we'll let you start this off.
Listen.
Yes, absolutely.
Khalif.
Yes,
we have a story.
We want the people to hear from everyone for themselves so that they can judge for themselves what these people think, how these people would either benefit or harm our community, how these people would approach the problems that we're dealing with, whether they even have policies that address the things that are happening in the black community. Yes, we want everybody. We want to hear from them if they want to come on. Now, the strategy now among many in the GOP, including Doug Mastriano, who's running for governor, is not to talk to media, to really deliver an unfiltered message through his own social media, through his commercials, through friendly media who aren't going to ask him tough questions, through audiences that aren't going to challenge him. One thing I can say about WURD is that we challenge people. I want to know whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. What are you going to do for the black community? And don't give me the same canned answers that they gave you on the bullet points on your sheet. No, I want an answer to this specific problem that we are dealing with in this community right now. And so, yeah, we want Dr. Oz, all of them. Tell them come on my show.
And to add to that, Solomon, because I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. We go down a slippery and dangerous slope when we decide as newsmakers who gets to come on the air if we're going to be unbiased, right? And so our role is not to tell people who to vote for. Our role is to give them the information and then let them decide for themselves. But if we come across as a purely one-sided station for one particular party or another, it doesn't make us any better than other people that we complain about. So we must hear all sides.
Okay.
We must.
And you know what's interesting about that? And even for big elections and small elections, when I first started doing talk shows, and Khalif can back me up because he was my producer, back when the other radio station was in existence, Tony Payton Jr. was running for office. He's running for state representative. Y'all know who Tony Payton Jr. is, right? Okay. No.
It's Tony Payton Sr.'s son.
Right, exactly. Well, anyway, Tony was a young man. He was running against this man who I don't remember his name, but I do remember his middle name was Laverne. And the reason why I know that is because it was an L initial. They were in conversation, Tony and this man, and Tony's opponent was actually terrible. And we knew that because we got into conversation, and every time I asked Tony a question, he would answer it brilliantly. And then I would ask this man whose middle name was Laverne the question, and he'd be like, whatever Tony said. So, I mean, it was like that every single question, and it was like the most insane thing. But if we had not had that conversation, we never would have known that. And I think the man was an incumbent. And from having that conversation, Tony was elected. And, the rest they say is history, but we can't say that. We can't say what Khalif brilliantly did that helped the process.
Everything Khalif does is brilliant, yeah.
No, he's like, don't do that. But anyway, there was a great moment that we had in the conversation where there was entertainment value added to it. It was kind of a clowning.
So if I could just really add something quickly, I think it is important that no matter what side of the ticket they're on, that all media allow them to share their viewpoints, their values, their mission statement, because being a millennial and working with my generation and the generation under me, we're trying to decide who to vote for. We're trying to decide what party to pick if there's a particular party that meets our needs. So if we're listening to black radio and they only have one side of the ticket and we're not agreeing with that side of the ticket, we don't vote. Because we don't know what the other side is offering. So I believe that each side should be represented, regardless if we agree with their viewpoints or not.
And how do you feel about more sides? Because I think we don't really talk about all sides. No, but what I'm saying is we are really stuck in a two-party system, and we can trailblaze that effort to have another party, two more parties, three.
Well done.
You know what I mean?
Well done. Okay. I'm going to throw a magic wand in your hand right now. Each of you get one magic wand. And it allows you to go on air and talk about anything you want. And let's say that God said this is your last program. What would be the thing that you would want to talk about most? We start with the morning show?
Education.
Education?
That's why we got to do a show together. Education.
Education?
Education. You know why? Because some years ago, when Seth Williams was DA, one of the things he said to me that has stuck with me for years, is that the one thing that all of the people who are involved in the gun violence have in common is that they're high school dropouts. right? Whether they're on the shooter side or on the victim side, that many of them were high school dropouts. Now, that's not necessarily always the case, but it is always the case that if you have a high school diploma, you make less, about $1 million less than you make if you have a college degree. It is always the case that if you have less education, that you are more likely to live in poverty. And so all of the problems that we talk about, gun violence, poverty, lack of wealth, lack of home ownership, like all of these things come down to the quality of, or the lack of quality of our education. So if I was going to do my last show, education, it would absolutely be about education. And I would hope that I would have some scholarships in my hand and just be able to give out to our people so that they could get the education that they need. Charles?
Probably two topics. Let's go with two topics. One is that, and that goes back to your earlier question, I wouldn't be inviting anyone from another side that is an existential threat to black people on our platform unless it's in a very carefully organized, formatted debate. So I've worked with Republicans, I've worked in Republican spaces, and I would have told you 25 years ago that the Republican Party was a legitimate political party. And so this will be one of the last, one of two last topics on my show. The Republican Party of 25 years ago does not exist today. It's not a legitimate political party. And our duty and our job as black media is to do no harm to the people we serve, is to provide a layer of protection against that level of vitriol and hostility and animus and violence and disinformation that has been literally killing our people. The level of killing of our people has accelerated during this pandemic because of this stochastic terrorism of a group of white supremacists posing as a Republican Party. And that includes Mehmet Oz and also Doug Mastriano, who's going around regaling himself in Confederate uniforms. So that's one. The second piece is literacy, illiteracy. It makes no sense. And I don't know why there's not enough noise made about this. I don't know why people have not sued the Philadelphia school district for this, like parents, black parents had enough sense to in Detroit. 65% of children in the Philadelphia public school district, the majority of them, the vast majority of them black, are illiterate, cannot read at grade level. 80% cannot do basic math. That is a crisis. And then we're sitting around wondering, why is there so much gun violence? Okay. You fix that literacy problem. At the start, from kindergarten on, where you have it where 100%, I didn't do well in math, so we can give a little latitude on math. But there should be no excuse. We should not be tolerating. There should be zero tolerance for such high levels of illiteracy. And then on top of that, a 30% adult illiteracy rate in Philadelphia. 100% of black people should be literate and can read. Then everything from that, everything else will flow. Everything else we can solve.
You dovetail with Solomon on the education piece. Shomari, you?
Oh, I'm somewhere else. I got two. My last show, I'm in the room. I got India Ari, Liz Wright, and Tandizwa from South Africa, just singing songs, and we're doing a live broadcast, and I'm just in heaven. And that's
just regaling yourself. Huh?
I could literally die after that show. That don't have to be my last show. I could literally die after it. It's everything for me. And then one of my favorite shows I did, and then I got scared, was God Search.
God Search.
Yeah. So you know how they had an NCAA tournament? Uh-huh. And Star Search?
Yeah.
So we were auditioning gods, because I think black people need a new god, because the ones we have right now ain't really working for us. So we were doing like a tournament to try to find a new god. People would whisper to me.
Solomon is moving over to the lightning.
Exactly. And people would do that. They would come up to me and say, I really love that show. And then they back up because they thought they were going to get struck by lightning.
So we need a new God.
Yeah, a whole series of God search. So when we find and crown the new God worthy of black people, that would be my final
new God
show.
Worthy of black. Whole nother show, ladies and gentlemen.
Jesus was not white.
Whole nother show.
Jesus was not white.
Jesus was not white.
I went to Jesus' tomb, and he's not white. He was never white.
Joann, I don't think Joann, have you answered it yet, Joann?
I'm on a really lively panel.
This is the most vibrant panel right here. I mean, really.
I would say economic development would be my last show. I believe that black bodies have been monetized throughout the history of the U.S., even today. I started my career as a social worker and quickly understood that what really was going on was that they were making money off of black buck misery. And with all of the money that gets allocated in the budget, it goes to agencies where people make money off of us. They have white lawyers, they have white accountant firms, they have white consultants, they live in the suburbs, and they get billions of dollars, and you ride through black neighborhoods, and they look the same.
Okay.
So what we need to do is if that money is going to be allocated to resolve issues in the black community, let's invest it in the black community. So my last show would be talking about how you take those dollars and reappropriate them back into the community, and then we can have better education and better schools. We can have some of the things that we've been asking about because we will have invested it back.
Okay, economic empowerment, which fits right in to the theme of our Founders Day. Economic
I gotta
empowerment.
say something about politics.
Now, I want to make sure that everybody got a chance to answer that.
I want to answer.
Okay, Andrea didn't answer it, and then Solomon will.
I didn't answer
and you
either.
didn't either. Okay, Andrea and then Envy, and then Solomon has.
Can I answer
statement.
too?
Oh, Kayla, you didn't answer?
No, I didn't answer.
Okay, then Kayla, you got a mic. Go for it right now.
For my last show, I would really love to do a show on intercultural communication and that versus community, because as the world keeps growing, a lot of community spaces and cultural things are blending together, and we need to know how to respect one another. Even if we don't agree with everybody's values, we need to understand their culture and where they're coming from so we can have a respectful community. And then I'll
Okay. Andrea Lawful Sanders.
Just piggybacking on Solomon, I'd also like to add emotional intelligence. Yes. We have a lot of conversations about one group versus another. And quite frankly, while we're talking about, let's deal with the Republican and the Democrats, while we're talking about the Republicans and how they're destroying our communities, let's also talk about the Democrats who have been in office since Jesus was a boy and destroying our communities. If we're going to choose, then we don't interview anybody. Right? So we want to really come from a place where we hear from everyone and use our emotional intelligence as we're working through this. Because we all have views and opinions. We all feel very strongly about so many things, right? And we have the leverage to use our voices, the platforms that we have, to get words out. But there is no profit in prevention. And so when we use our emotional intelligence and use it in a way so that we're able to do what we need to do to support one another, we'll be able to move things forward like education and economic development and all the other things that we have to talk about. But when we get offended and fuss and fight about things that seem to be trivial to other people, right now we have so much to offer to our community, and then we have other news medias that are taking over everything, reporting our news for us. And they listen to us and then report it on the 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock news. I can't tell you how many times this happens on my show. They won't cover a story. They will not cover a story until we cover it, and then it shows up on the mainstream media. So they have to respect our voices on some level. They must. So emotional intelligence and how we manage through this is going to be key. That would be my last show.
Your last show is going to be on emotional intelligence?
Yes, that's where I am.
Okay. And then we'll go to
I've been
Solomon.
really thinking about this. Like, I'm really listening, and I'm like, my last show, it will either be about black farmers, or it will be about black design, like black design and architecture. But now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I would probably have my last show be like a Sunday dinner where black farmers grow the food that black chefs cater, and we all sit around this big long table and have conscious conversation about black farming and black design.
We're gonna roll in the grass too?
Roll in the grass.
Right. You know,
the Last Supper. You hear me?
You don't have to wait for it. You can invite us all to dinner this weekend.
Let's do it.
Solomon, you had something you want. And after Solomon, I want to ask a question that's going to get all of us in trouble. But Solomon, if you would.
So, First, I agree with Andrea. I think you have to hear from all sides. Who are we to censor what our people can hear and who they can hear from in terms of their choices politically? No. I trust the listeners and believe that they are intelligent enough to hear the truth and then decide for themselves. I don't need to be deciding for them. That is, no, not at all. So I think the other thing
James Baldwin black.
Right. You know what I mean? So the other thing is this. I talk to young people, and it's one of the things that I started at WURD. I started an organization called Man Up PHL. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, yeah. Salute them.
And we started that organization. My son's friend was shot dead in South Philly at the age of 15. And he was buried in a school uniform, and all I could see was my son. And I knew that we had to do something. I called our listeners together, and 400 of them showed up in a standing room only meeting in 2019, and we have not stopped since then. Through that organization, I talked to young men. They're between 18 and 35, and we are so disconnected from what young people really think that we better be listening to all sides. Because here's the thing, you talk to young brothers and they like, what's wrong with Trump? Ain't nothing wrong with Trump. Trump sent me a check. His name was on that check. Trump giving out that paper. When I went to vote in the presidential election, some young men drove by in a car. They wasn't about to vote, but they yelled out the car, y'all better be voting for Trump. He giving out that paper. See, if we don't hear from both sides, if we actually think that we can actually censor what our people hear, then we have no idea what's going on in these streets. No idea. We have to be able to hear, we have to be able to educate people, and we have to be able to allow them to make their own decisions, man. Trust them enough. Believe in their intellect enough to allow them to make their own decisions once they hear the truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been just extraordinary.
I just want to throw a question out there.
And
hold on one second.
I just did.
Would that means we can invite Al Qaeda and ISIS on WURD? That means if we go back to
Al Qaeda and ISIS ain't running for office, man.
I'm just saying that would mean if the Taliban, they're a legitimate government right now in Afghanistan, so we're going to invite the Taliban on WURD.
I mean,
I tell you what, when you talk about you not going to invite Republicans on, and there's actually a black man, the deputy commissioner of the Republican Party in Pennsylvania.
Can I do this? Gentlemen and ladies, we have 5 minutes.
You have to give 5
minutes.
One real quick.
You got to give the people a chance to hear from everybody.
If the founder of the Ku Klux Klan who was a legitimate politician back in that day.
We're talking about all these hypotheticals.
We'd invite him on WURD.
Solomon and Charles and Shomari. Can you, here we go. We got 5 minutes, and I want to get us all in trouble.
Is real, so it's a legitimate government in Afghanistan, so we invite him on WURD. That's what you're basically. If we're going to all sides, if everything is all sides, that's both sides.
We've been doing so well.
And I'm telling you, isn't it wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, to have it like that? I tell you. But this is something that I need you guys. I need all of you. I need all of you to do me a favor and talk to a group of people that all of us talk about, and you know we do, and that is the listeners.
Yeah.
Now, all of us have thoughts that we wish our listeners could do, think, or say certain things that we don't get a chance necessarily to say to them. If you could open up the head of our listening audience and put something in it that you think would be beneficial for the operation and the positive outreach of WURD, what would you give? What would you instill in our listening audience?
The only thing that comes to mind for me is thank you. If they take the time to turn on that dial from 6 o'clock in the morning until we go off at whatever time, we don't always agree. Let me tell you, I go round robin, me and Maurice from Southwest, Jesus be offense. I have to get off the air and take a vitamin and an Advil, but I love the brother. You understand what I'm saying? We don't agree on many instances. This George, Jesus, what's the other one? Prince, but they take the time.
Prince is a Trump vote.
Yes, Prince is a staunch Republican. He says it. Right, absolutely.
Okay.
So can you imagine me telling Prince he couldn't call it? I know Prince is a Republican. And Prince, we talk about all the things that are going on there. I don't say to them, you can't call in because you've been locked up before. You can't call in because you were a drug dealer. You can't call in. Name the ism here. Right? If we're going to invite and appreciate the people that are spending the time to listen to us, my one thought is thank you, because you don't have to do it.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Brother Shomari.
Yeah, I want to build on the thank you. Solomon said, like, trust the listeners earlier, and a lot of people felt like, or I would get whispered that there's not an audience for what I talk about. And I really wanted to really take the station had the Pan-African kind of cultural conversation, but it was only on the weekend. And I wanted to kind of move it into the weekday conversation. And I think 10 years later, I just want to say thank you for trusting the audience enough that there was a space to talk about Orisha, the Loa, to take the jinx off of voodoo. You know, so to really begin to have a different language about our appreciation of culture. And I just got invited to do the libation at Monica's church. To me, that's a 10-year kind of ashe on everything I wanted to do. And I thank the audience. I thank the station.
I always said you were going to end up at a church. I always said that, Shomari. Ladies and gentlemen, I just got word that we have reached the end of our time. The Shomari Show, Wake Up with Word with Solomon Jones, CrossWURDz with Kayla J, The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders, Envy McKee and the Envy McKee Show, Joann Bell with The Source, and of course, Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Please give a hand to the greatest group of talk show hosts that America has today. Guys, you have been incredible. You have been absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.